This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Alison Stewart. Our series, The Big Picture, is when we speak with Oscar nominees who worked behind the camera to make the best movies of the year. Today, we are focusing on the look of Nosferatu. Director Robert Eggers is known for his films that combine historical accuracy with the stories of folklore, myth, and horror. But to pull it off, he needs a great team to help him achieve his mission. In a moment, we'll speak with costume designer Linda Muir. But up first, we're talking to production designer Craig Lathrop. To bring 19th century German and Transylvania to life, Craig designed winding European streets, a rural village, and even a decaying castle, home to the bloodthirsty vampire Count Orlok. Craig has been collaborating with Eggers since his first feature film, The Witch, and he is now Oscar nominated for his work on Nosferatu. Craig, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you so much.
You've been working with Robert Eggers since his first film, The Witch.
Yeah.
How did you two first connect?
Honestly, it was an interview. So just straight up an interview. But the interesting thing was I remember I got that script and I was interested in it, and I did quite a bit of research before I went into the interview. And I probably came into this interview with way too many images. Like, it was ridiculous. But we started talking, and I pulled out these, I wasn't sure if I should, but I pulled out all these images, and he reached into his case and pulled out almost the same images. And I thought, okay, this is going to work.
Why do you think you were good collaborators with Eggers?
Well, first off, he's amazing. I can't answer for him talking about me, but I think we're on the same wavelength in terms of his approach to doing these films is to be as authentic as you possibly can be. I know that's an impossible task, but that's where we start. And so, doing a lot of research in the material world in these different eras is the beginning of the journey of designing everything. But that's very important to him. And
what does that mean
works
for your job as somebody who's so into historical accuracy?
Well, that means that I'm trying to keep up with all the research is what that means. We're just trying to everything that's the material world. So, my department is the art department proper, set, decoration, props. So with the exception of the costumes, the rest of the world building that we're doing is what I'm responsible for. So that's what we're researching and trying to figure out. And the main thing is that we're trying to figure out the base, right? The idea is that you're gonna do all this research so you know what the world looks like, and at that point you're gonna actually then start to design the sets so that they have the right beats that you need, the emotional beats, and designing the sets for very specific characters and all of the regular things that you would do when you're designing a film. But we start off with the world stops at 1838, so anything before that is good to go, but anything after that is not.
So where did your research start for this film?
Well, you know what? This film is an interesting film because Rob told me he wanted to make Nosferatu right after we did The Witch. And so the first script I got was in 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. So where did I start? Well, when I started was all the way back there.
Wow.
And that's what I've been looking at. So, where did I start? I probably started with paintings. There's no real photographs from 1838. So, was looking at paintings and then started digging into all the rest of it.
Yeah, we read in Architectural Digest that you looked at a lot of Caspar David Friedrich's paintings for inspiration. There's going to be the big show at the Met, which opens this weekend.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. We have a chance to check it out while you're in town.
Schedule's very tight.
Very tight. Okay.
Yeah, we're leaving in the morning to go to LA.
There'll be a lot of time to see it. Why was his work useful for you?
Well, it's the romantic is what we were looking at. All the romanticism art movement. So it's really his. It's probably a much bigger question, but the idea of the awe and the sublime in the Romantic era, and really a lot with nature is the way that they were working, but also that works well into what we were doing as well. we were trying to ground a lot of this in Romanticism. I know that the original film says it's this expressionistic, German expressionistic. We were trying to push it a little bit more towards the romantic. Not romantic as in romantic love,
Sure.
but like a romantic art movement.
So this is set in a fake German town.
Mm-hmm.
What did you notice about the architecture from this period that you named, 1838, that you knew you had to get right in the sets?
Well, it was a Hanseatic League town, which is a Baltic German trade town. And so that's a very specific architectural style. There's a lot of brick Gothic. There's a lot of brick Renaissance and even Baroque. But there's not a lot of stone. I mean, honestly, almost all the buildings in that area are made out of brick from that era, with little bit of stone ornament, but that's it. So that was one of them. And just making sure that you got that look, which a lot of us would recognize with the step gables and anyway, trying to make sure that we got that look. And also, we ended up building the town, all the streets I built. I've looked at a lot of other towns and cities that may have a couple of buildings that are fantastic and are very interesting and would have worked for us, but there were no streetscapes. And then even on top of that, most of these towns, you're talking about a tourist area, which is sort of spit shined, and there's a nice Starbucks on the corner. It's just not what we needed.
Yeah.
We needed a little bit more dirt and grit and a place to go as we went from the bustling city in the beginning to the plague-ridden city later in the film.
So that was all built for your film?
Yeah, we built all of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
My guest is production designer Craig Lathrop. He is Oscar nominated for his work on the film Nosferatu. All right, let's talk about the plague-ridden city. Robert sat right there and told me, yes, they used real rats on the set.
We did. We had thousands of them.
What was it like to watch all the rats running everywhere?
It was good, actually. I mean, I know that they're, I hate to say this, but they were a little smelly once you get a lot of them together.
Yeah.
But they were really great. You know what? The animal handlers were amazing. I didn't realize how well you could train rats, for instance.
They're smart.
They're smart. They are smart. And we had the rats that we had that were live were foreground. And so in the background, I actually built these like half-meter square, we were calling them rat mats, where I took a bunch of toy rats, very realistic toy rats, and I put them together like they were climbing all over each other and made a mold and flocked it and all of that, so that we'd have a base layer to put out there. And then the heavy lifting for the deep background was visual effects as they animated rats. But there was 5,000 rats about right next to the camera. I mean, in that chapel, there would have been 100,000 rats. So
wow. We've got a letter here, text here that says, hold on. The coloring of the film struck me and enhanced the beauty of film, the harsh reds and the icy blues. Was that an artistic decision or part of the production process?
Well, it was everything that we did was certainly a choice. I mean, we had the luxury of building everything, so the palette was very much in our control, and we definitely wanted, for the most part, a limited palette, with maybe the great exception being the Harding's house. Just one second. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I mean, we were trying to limit the palette and make sure that it fit with everything that we're doing. I can't remember. I hope that answered the question.
That was a good answer. Let's talk about Orlok's castle. What did you notice from your research into other castles that you definitely wanted to include in Orlok's castle?
Well, there was one castle in particular, Corvin Castle in Romania, that I really loved. And I nicked the columns pretty much straight up. Different materials, but the shape was the same. And And then there was a lot of other little. I mean, there was so many different details all through there, from the locks and the blacksmiths that I had to build the locks for us so that we could have them, to just the shape of certain corridors and certain different castles. But I'd say more than the things that I took, because we did look at a lot of castles, and originally I was looking at them hoping that we'd find a location. But they were all beautiful. There was two flavors. Either they were a complete ruin and walls were down and there was nothing left of them really, or they'd been beautifully renovated and they were whitewashed and they were pristine and ready for the throngs of tourists to come through and see these beautiful spaces. And they are beautiful. They're spectacular. But they were not Orlok's castle. I needed decay. I needed, that's what I was looking for.
The castle also had a maze-like feeling to it. How did you want to create that feeling?
How did I want to create it? We created the mazes were mainly in the hallways.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have as many straight lines as a couple of straight lines.
It was that much
I'm not
maze-like.
quite sure how to say how I wanted to create it. I knew that we wanted to create it, so we were creating a maze. So that was you wanted it to be disorienting. You wanted it to feel like the character feels where you're not quite sure where you are. And so that was part of it.
During the film, we come to a village in Transylvania where people, they're very frightened about what's going on in that castle. What were you able to learn about Transylvanian villages, what they might have looked like, how the people might have responded to someone new coming in?
Yeah, that's a much bigger question than you realize. There's a lot that we learned. But I will say it was interesting when we were in Romania, and we were scouting some castles. We scouted Corvin Castle, as I mentioned before, but we also had the opportunity to go to two different outdoor museums, and I'm terribly sorry, but I can't remember their names. But these are great. These are places where they've literally moved a bunch of buildings from around Romania from different eras, and so we were able to look at the architecture and these spaces, and the carving and all of that. And then we had some consultants that were helping us in terms of what was going on and what the different fabrics mean, and the textiles that we brought over. And then once we get into Dacian, which is the whole language that would have been from way before, that's a whole nother level of everything that we were trying to figure out. It's a dead language, and there's nothing that we know of the written language. But we had a linguist to help us with what they believed the language would have sounded like. And then we were tasked with coming up with a written language for it. And there's very little bits of it that are available. And that's what we did. So the contract that you see, that would be our version of Dacian. So
Von Franz is played by Willem Dafoe, and he's sort of the Van Helsing character, and we get to see his office.
Yes, his living space, office, workspace. It's all one. It's like when I lived in New York as my studio apartment.
Tell me about creating that space a little bit, about what you needed to have so that people could understand who this mad scientist was.
It's funny. I think it was Kirsting. I'm trying to think of the artist that was my first inspiration on that. I knew I wanted it to be in an attic, just so that the walls weren't like clean lines. Once again, everything's a little bit twisted and crooked in there. And I knew that he was into the occult, so we did a lot of research of items and what it would look like to have, all of his research that he'd be doing for the occult, and also alchemy. So we just kept on adding more and more. I mean, we found there was I'm terribly sorry, I can't remember names today, but there was a lovely group that we found that was connected to a chemical company, to be strangely, which was a museum, and they actually made a lot of the alchemy tools and beakers for us.
Cool.
We were able to get that. So it was great. They were a great resource. But we just kept layering it in and further because we needed it to feel as mad as he is.
Yeah, as more and more and more. Like every time you took down a beaker, there might be something else behind it.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
When you think back on Nosferatu, is there something that you're particularly proud of? Or that was really hard to figure out that you figured it out?
You know, I'm proud of quite a bit of the film. I'm very proud of this film in general. The streets that we did were probably our biggest sets for the film and probably my biggest sets ever, just because we did 5 blocks. So that's a lot. There's a lot of detail that goes into that. But really, I would say, and I'm not trying to cop out, it's really that I feel that we were able to create the world, build the world that Rob had envisioned, and that it's cohesive, and that it helps the story to tell the story. Hopefully it all works for everybody, that it feels like you're actually in these places. That's what I'm most proud of. So
not the rat mats?
Not the rat mats. Although I do like the monastery as well.
Tell me. Yeah, tell me about that.
Oh, the monastery. We did the monastery that's in there. So when I first saw images of these beautiful monasteries in Romania, I felt like we just had to do that, because originally some of the early research we did, we had a wooden monastery, but I saw these and I just thought, they're all, like, in the true sense of the word, they're awesome. They're awe-inspiring. And it just felt like, to me, that's what Hutter should feel as he's being dragged into here. And so I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, because it's a lot to paint and it's a lot to ask somebody. Every inch of the place is a fresco. But we did it with a combination of, there was a company I found in Italy that had a product, very thin, pliable product that they could print onto, and we started with that and then painted over it and added gold leaf and et cetera, et cetera. But I actually loved the images of it. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, when I talked Rob into going in this direction, I wasn't sure how we were going to do it. But I knew that we should.
Okay, look for the monasteries. My guest has been Craig Lathrop. He is the Oscar nominated for his work on Nosferatu. He is the production designer. It is lovely to meet you.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.